BibleWorm, BibleWorm, reading the Bible with BibleWorm.
Welcome to BibleWorm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and the founding pastor of Mercy Community Church in Little Rock. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week, we read Luke chapter 15, verses 1 to 32, 3 parables of things that were lost and have been found. Somewhat in spite of ourselves, we can't help but melt into the sheer joy of the finder. We wonder about the experiences of those who were never lost. And I managed to embarrass myself so thoroughly that this episode is 1 minute too long because we couldn't bear to cut the story out. It has to do with middle school, so you know it's bad. Thanks for being with us. Hello, Bobby. It's good to see you.
Hey, Amy. It's good to see you, too.
Bobby, you know, parables make me nervous.
Yeah?
But it's
Can you
going to
talk
be
about that a little bit?
It's going to be okay. Well,
It's going to be okay.
They they mean more than you think they mean. But you can't jump to the end before you've, sat with the parable itself.
That's right.
And I just always feel like, I don't know, it's hard for me to focus on the right thing. So I hereby give you license. Not that you need a license, because you'll do this anyway, but rein me in. Rein me in.
Parables have an excess of meaning. This is why parables work so well, is that they're just stories. Like if Jesus just wanted, or whoever's telling the parable, just wanted to give you a one-line summary, he could have just given you a one-line summary.
Yeah, Jesus
do
knows
this
how
or
to
do
that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the fact that he's telling stories means he's opening up this kind of interpretive world in which he wants us to move around and think. And so parables almost always have more meaning than you can sort of summarize. Mm-hmm. So you can tell I'm not going to rein you in. I'm going to push us deeper.
I love the words you just put around it, though. I love the phrase excess of meaning. We're not going to get all the meaning. That's okay. Because then when we come back to it next time, there'll be something else to find.
Yeah.
So I haven't said yet, we're in Luke chapter 15, verses 1 to 32.
We are. Yeah, that's probably worth saying.
That's probably worth noting. All right, so let's just dive in then. Yeah?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Picking up in verse 1. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." Let's begin at the beginning.
Yeah.
With these opening couple of verses. Does anything stand out to you in particular in this very short conversation between the Pharisees and Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a common thing in Luke where Jesus is spending his time with sinners and tax collectors, and the Pharisees think that's not the way that Jesus, I guess a holy man or a teacher, ought to be spending his time. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of a sense of, I think, judgment about that, and a little sense of, one can read it as jealousy, hey, why don't you spend more time with us? Mm-hmm. And so that's what motivates these parables. What are your thoughts about the Pharisees' response there?
Okay. This might be a very embarrassing story if you say I have no idea what you're talking about, Amy. So let's see. Those are always fun. Think back to middle school, when you were in middle school. Are you ready?
Okay.
Now you have a crush on someone.
Okay.
Did you ever try to have the experience of sharing a soda or eating some leftover food that they left somewhere, some pizza?
No! What's wrong with you?
Oh, come on. You didn't? I know you did. You're
somebody I thought was really cute, left half their potato on the table, and I just went and ate the bacon bits or whatever. No, I did
You
not
didn't
do that. No.
Okay, well, I definitely didn't either, so I'm glad we clarified this situation.
So it's like you shared a kiss via the potato
You
remnants.
shared a kiss via the potato, and they were not even there for it, but that's okay, because now some small percentage of the atoms in your body will be impacted by atoms that were once in their body.
I will say that hearing about your experience of middle school has made me feel less bad about my experience of middle school.
I say all of this because I think it's important to point out that at least, perhaps not at this moment, but generally speaking, the sort of accusation against Jesus is not just that he is with them, but that he's sharing this really sort of intimate, unifying experience of taking an object that was once one and breaking it into pieces and sharing it among their bodies.
I think you're exactly right. There's a formation of community here around food, and the Pharisees are saying, are you really sure you want to form community with those folks?
Yeah. Okay, but that is just a frame to lead us into the first parable itself.
That's right.
Okay, there is a shepherd with 100 sheep.
Yeah.
He's done a good job. He has 99 of those sheep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really know what shepherding standards are, but that seems pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing that there's 100 sheep. He's still got 99 of them. And, the question that Jesus says is, which one of you wouldn't leave the 99 and go get the one? And my first thought is like, almost everybody would say, I wouldn't do that.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that, because I was like, I don't know about shepherding standards, but I don't think I would leave my 99 in the wilderness.
Yeah. That's important. And, that's a detail that Luke has in his parable that Matthew doesn't have in his, is that they're in the wilderness. Like there is no, there's a sense of exposure here.
Yeah.
And so the image you're left with is you've got 99 sheep out in the desert, and then the shepherd leaves them to go bring back the other. And the question is, who wouldn't do that? And I think the answer is nobody would do that. Like most shepherds would like what you're saying is a 1% loss of my flock is a reasonable loss. Like that's just the cost of doing shepherding business. And so I'm sorry for that sheep, but I got to stick with my 99. And so in my mind, this shepherd is doing something you would never do, but Jesus is framing it as doesn't everybody do this? It's pretty fascinating.
I mean, I just wonder reading it, again, trying to think from the perspective of a shepherd who would go after that one.
Yeah.
Why would he?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that very risky? Wouldn't he then risk losing the other 99? So now he's got one and he has to go find the other 99?
There's a couple of things here that are interesting. Like the verb that's used there is not one of the sheep wandered off. The verb is he lost a sheep. And so it sort of puts the impetus on the shepherd, right? The shepherd, by losing the one, in some way is responsible for that loss. And so I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing about that particular sheep, right? It's not like there was one sheep who was always getting lost and he went and found it. It's just one of them got lost. And so the implication there is if any of the other 99 had gotten lost, he would have done the same thing for them.
Right.
So it's not that sheep is special exactly.
Right.
It's that the herd as a whole, it's the hundredness of the 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the shepherd does this.
Yeah.
And by golly, it works.
This description here is really beautiful. The shepherd finds the sheep and places it on his shoulders and carries it home and is so excited.
Yeah, it really sort of takes me from this practical mindset of this was a foolish thing to do, shepherd.
Yeah.
But it really pulls you into a much more just sort of emotional state, to feel the joy of this shepherd at being able to find that one lost sheep.
Yeah, I think that's right. So there's a couple of things there that seem worth noticing to me. One is we've been talking about this shepherd as taking risks, which I think is right. But also, this shepherd had 100 sheep. That's a lot of things to keep track of. Yeah. And he was able to look out in his sheep, and he's not counting them as they come into the pen, right? He's counting them while they're out in the wilderness, and he's able to see that he's missing 1 out of 100 sheep. That is super impressive.
Yeah.
And he cares enough about the one, or maybe he cares enough about the hundredness of the 100, that he's going to go and get the one and celebrate. So while on the one hand, the shepherd seems to be taking unreasonable risks, on the other hand, he's extraordinarily attentive to the flock. and the importance of keeping that whole flock together.
Yes.
It's a really lovely depiction of the shepherd.
Yes. And that it's not just the one, it's the wholeness. I love that. The 100ness of the 100. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That each sheep in that herd of 100 is equally important.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's easy to miss that point in this parable. And if you think about
for sure.
the psychology of a sheep, like, they're probably not thinking about what would happen if I was the lost one.
Yeah.
But there is something here where if the shepherd is like, you know what, I can take a loss of one sheep and I'm happy with 99, then suddenly every other sheep in that 99 is at risk, right? If I get lost, what's going to happen?
Yes.
And so the 100 sheep, the other 99, when the shepherd goes and brings back the one, the other 99 could think, if I ever get lost, he's going to do that for me. Like, there's a real comfort in that community.
I love that.
But that's not what Luke says the story is about.
I was going to say, but that's not what Luke loves.
Yeah.
So, and then Luke's perspective seems to be much more... there is more joy over bringing the one back than the fact that the other 99 stayed.
Yeah.
Like, really, that one who wandered is more important.
That's the way it reads, for sure. And when we say Luke's perspective, it's really Jesus's perspective according to Luke, right?
Yeah,
Jesus is still talking. It's not the narrator. And so, but I think, when you say that's Luke's perspective, I think that's probably right, is Luke has sort of created this narrative for Jesus in which Jesus interprets the parable in the way that Luke finds appealing.
Okay, so reading this last comment here, that is sort of Luke's understanding of this parable, my first question, like, to be sort of biblical about it, is, so who among us is righteous?
Right.
Like, I sort of would have expected from the original setup of this scene that Jesus would say, like, get over yourself, Pharisees, you're no better than these folks.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like this is saying the opposite, like, you are the righteous, Pharisees.
Yep.
And so I don't need to be concerning myself with you. I need to go bring in these other folks.
No, I think that's right. And elsewhere in the gospel, Jesus says, in Luke, he says, he's been sent for the sinner, not for the righteous.
Yeah.
And the implication here is the same. You're exactly right, that there are people who are righteous and they are not in need of Jesus to come and rescue them.
Right.
But there are people who are sinners, and that is who he's trying to return them to the fold. Yeah. The other thing that makes me laugh about that interpretation is the poor little sheep is like, suddenly the sheep who the shepherd lost is now a sinner, right? The sheep is like terrible, like, you shouldn't have gotten lost, you little sheep. Like, the sheep didn't do anything wrong. He just did what sheep do, and the shepherd didn't keep him safe. But in the parable, in the interpretation of the parable, he becomes the
And you know what's so interesting? Just reading this parable, I will say I got myself a little... I think I had some implicit, unexplored, like, yeah, that sheep was naughty. Like, that's a mischievous sheep, until we get to the next parable about the coins. And I'm like, okay, they're inanimate objects. Like,
clearly the coin was not a sinner.
Clearly the coin did not do this. So let's move on to the next one and see if it makes things more clear or more muddy.
Yeah.
Verse 8. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I lost. Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. I am really glad we moved on to inanimate objects, because it really, I mean, if we were tempted to think of ourselves as the sheep in the last one, you're not going to think of yourself as a coin. Right?
Did you ever in middle school, like, you would
Stop
follow
it.
somebody around,
Stop.
and if they dropped a coin out of their pocket, you would go and pick it up and put it in your pocket so you could you could share in their joy?
I probably did. Oh, middle school. Okay, good times.
No, I think you're right that you're not going to think of yourself as a coin, but then the interpretation, which I know we're going to talk about the story as a story first, but the interpretation really is kind of trying to get you to think about the experience of the coins. Like, to me, what this coins does is it makes you say, like, this interpretation that Luke's offering is weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's trying to get us to think about something that the parable doesn't actually naturally invite us to think about.
Yes. No, sheeps and coins do not... Sheeps? Sheep.
Sheeps.
Sheep and coins do not repent.
They do not.
No.
So if you read this parable from the perspective of the woman and not from the perspective of the coin, what do you, like, where does your interpretation go in that light?
So reading this one, it draws my attention to the fact that each coin has value.
Yeah.
And in this case, I don't see a risk in leaving the other one. She's in her house.
Yeah.
It just is, it's worth it to look for the other value, the thing that is valuable to you that you've lost.
The other thing, like clearly this woman lost this coin, right? This coin did not hop up in the middle of the night and jump off the table and roll under the bed.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting that she's, it's hard to deny that somehow this woman has a responsibility for the losing.
Yes.
But the diligence of her finding is really the point of the parable, like how carefully. I mean, you get the impression that maybe it's the middle of the night. Like she had to light the lamp and she sweeps the house and she like turns over all the furniture and like she's really committed to finding this coin.
And comparing this story again to the parable with the sheep, I think I also had sort of running in my mind this sense that the shepherd would feel a responsibility to the sheep. Like I am responsible for this other living creature, and so I have to act on its behalf because I was charged with its care.
Yeah.
And that layer for me totally falls out of the story. Once it's just coins, it just draws my attention even more pointedly to the woman who is finding them and her joy at finding it. And it's all about her. She wants the coins for herself, and that, I know I'm not supposed to like skip to the parable part, but that...
No, go ahead.
I mean, that's a really different way of thinking about it. It's not just if we want to put a God figure in the role of the finder in this parable, a female finder, I will point out. It is really different to think like God has a responsibility to us and will find us because God has a responsibility to us, which may also be true, but that God selfishly takes joy in finding us is a really lovely extra layer on there.
I think that's kind of the way Luke is trying to get us to read it.
Yeah.
There's going to be joy, that CEB is joy breaks out in the presence of God's angels, which I just love that, the way that's translated. Yeah. And so there is that sense that not just God, but all the heavenly beings, like just selfishly, because they wanted all of their 10 or all of their 100 or whatever, joy breaks out in heaven. And it's not so much about the responsibility of the one. I think that's really lovely. The other thing that I love that what you pointed out there is if you do read the primary figure in these two texts as God, which I don't think you have to, but I do think as we're being invited to by Luke, then what you have here is a pairing, which Luke likes to do. You have a pairing of a male and a female character, and so God is here being depicted as a woman. So I think there's a really lovely interpretation if you do read this woman as God. In the first parable, we were saying maybe that's not the most obvious, or at least that's not the only way one could read this parable. So if you just read this parable as, here's a story about a woman who lost a coin, then you've got a shepherd who had 100 things and lost one and noticed that there was one missing and went and restored the one. You've got a woman who had 10 things and one went missing and she went and restored the one. And so this, like, finding the one to restore the whole seems to be... And we've got this sort of, like, progression down, 100, 10. And then in this next story, we're going to have 2.
Oh, we sure do. I didn't notice that, Bobby.
A.J. Levine. Brilliant.
A.J. Levine. She always brings it. Alrighty. So we are picking up in our third parable in verse 11. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his field to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare, but here I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. Can you imagine if your child was like, give me my inheritance now?
Yeah.
That's pretty chutzpahdik, as we would say.
Yeah. It's not entirely clear to me, like, how offensive this would be, but I'm pretty sure it would be offensive. Like, you hear everything from, like, it's socially inappropriate to, like, basically the equivalent of telling your father you wish they would die, you know, and give you the inheritance. I think it's probably somewhere in between those two, but it's certainly not the way things are done. And especially when he takes the inheritance and leaves to say, I don't want to be around you all anymore. So he ends up in a foreign country feeding pigs. I'm just curious, you know, do you know how that would ring in the ears of a Jewish reader, listener? Is the pig, like, could it be cows or whatever? Or is the pig significant?
I mean, so I think it does indicate that they're in a non-Jewish area if they're raising pigs.
Sure.
Beyond that, it does, I mean, it has a little bit of an extra sense of grossness to me, but I don't know if that's because I'm Jewish or just because I don't really like pigs.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, he's very clearly at a low point in his life. Like, exactly how low is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much we need to parse
If I was
out.
eating pig feed, like, it would be pretty low moment for me, even though pigs are not unclean in my world. Yeah.
Right. He's wishing that he could eat what the pigs were eating.
Yeah.
And then he has this realization
Yeah.
that he would be better off on his father's farm.
Yeah.
How do you parse out the sort of balance between self-interest, like, again, making a practical decision here, and some kind of real change of heart or realization that he has done something wrong?
Like, where he starts out is, my father's hired hands have food and I'm starving.
Yes.
This is purely, you know, somewhere between economics and survival. And so then he says, I know, I'll go and say, I've sinned against heaven and against you. That's very different than saying the son realized he had insulted his father and done the wrong thing by way of his family.
Yes.
So to me, it reads like he's in an economic situation that he needs to correct. The way he knows to correct it is to go home and say that he's had a change of heart. Do you read it similarly?
I do. And I think I have this assumption in my head because we've had these little summarizing phrases from Luke along the way about repentance. I'm expecting to see repentance.
Yeah.
But I don't see it.
Yeah.
Does it seem significant to you that the story does not recount anyone going to look for him? Like, it's different than the other parables. I don't know. Why is there no searching in this parable?
I mean, the answers I can think of are in a way that sheep and coins do not have sort of their own decision-making capacities, so one must go and look for them. A son does, and so you sort of let your son make his mistakes. And to go and look for him would be sort of insulting to his autonomy. The other reason that I could think of is that the shepherd and the woman with the coins are better at keeping track of their community, their 100 and their 10, than this father is at keeping track of his 2. Now, I don't know which way. Those result in very different interpretations.
I mean, yes, I think the general point that, you know, a human presumably can find their way back, and what the father winds up doing is throwing open the door.
Yeah.
So maybe that's, a way to both sort of honor their free will, their decision making.
Yeah.
And also take every opportunity to invite them back.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should we finish the parable and see if it answers?
I think so, because I was having like 3 or 4 thoughts, but they actually involve
okay,
the end of the thing.
Okay, so then we're picking up in verse 20. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again, for he was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate.
That is so beautiful. Like in the same way that those other celebrations are beautiful, this one I think all the more so because, you can relate to this kid who made a mistake and his family or at least his father welcomes him home.
Yeah, and as much as we just sort of looked at this planned statement that he was going to make, and we're like, well, you planned, it doesn't seem particularly earnest. The father has compassion before he says anything.
Yeah.
And so I almost get the sense that he wouldn't have needed to open his mouth for his father to embrace him and kill the fatted calf.
Yeah. So in that sense, the words don't matter. The intention doesn't matter. It's actually the compassion of the father that restores this situation.
Yeah.
I think that's hugely important.
Okay. Haha. Now we hear from the other son.
Yeah.
The plot thickens. Verse 25. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him, but he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." Then the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." So, how do you start to think about the son's reaction to what he sees here?
I feel for this guy.
Yeah.
For all sorts of reasons. What he says there is, he actually uses the word slaving, working like a slave. So I am the son, but I've been slaving. Mm-hmm. Whereas you've got this brother who's like, maybe I could be a hired hand, and then he gets the fatted calf. And so their experiences are all mixed up about who, what is it like being part of this family?
Yeah.
But then beyond that, I feel so terrible for him that nobody told him there was a party.
I know.
He's just out in the field. He's like coming home from a hard day's work, and he hears the music. So this party is in full force.
I know.
And he's like, "What's that?" And then so they just forgot. They forgot he was out there. They didn't think he was important enough to invite in.
Yeah.
So the other son going away and coming back and being celebrated is one layer, but then you didn't even invite me to the party. The father's going to invite him now.
Yeah, right.
Please come in. I'm sorry I forgot you were out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel terrible for this guy.
Yeah, and it really does sort of press on that question we said before. Is it that the one is back or that the 100 is whole?
Yeah.
If it were that the 100 is whole, you would think he would have remembered to invite his son in to celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he does not.
Yes.
And the son's response, "For all these years I've been working like a slave for you," for me really sort of underscores this idea that while my brother was off doing whatever he wanted, it's not that I wanted to do this. It's not that this was my idea of a good time and I necessarily found fulfillment in working your fields. It's that maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I understand my obligation to this system and I'm doing my best to do it. And my brother wasn't even trying to do it.
Yeah. And now he's getting this celebration with the fatted calf, and I've never even gotten a goat.
I've never gotten anything.
You could just have celebrated me a little bit, Dad. And he doesn't actually call him father either. He just says, "Look."
Yeah.
So you can see the fracture of family relationships here.
Yeah.
In all kinds of ways. And yeah, what you're saying there about the experience of the older brother, as he has experienced being at home as working like a slave.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He has not experienced it as being a treasured member of the family.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that this is Luke's point, but I think you could easily read in here something about not taking for granted that, the people who hang in there with you.
No, I think that's a great insight. And, one of the things that I've been talking about Amy Jo Levine all day, but one of the things that Amy Jo Levine says is a lot of interpretation depends on what you call the parable. And so this parable is called the parable of the prodigal son. And so that's where your attention goes. But she says, what if you call this the parable of the inattentive father? Mm-hmm. And that just totally reframes the way you think. Because then what's happened is you've got a guy with 100 sheep who realizes one's missing and goes and gets it. You've got a woman with 10 coins who realizes one's missing and goes and gets it. You've got a guy with 2 sons He loses one that comes back, but he's so inattentive, he doesn't even realize that he's lost the other one.
Right.
And so then there's a question of, like, who actually is the lost son in this story?
Yeah.
Is it the one who went away and came back and was celebrated, or is it the one who stayed and felt disconnected from his father and then got left in a field?
Yeah.
And if you read it that way, like, it really, really changes
It
things.
sure does. No, that's a great point. And I think it points out also, whereas I said there was this beautiful, encounter of seeing the son coming back and then feeling compassion once you see him. You could also talk about sort of the passivity of the father. Like he doesn't go looking for either son.
Yep.
And when both of them come back, he's like, yeah, come on in. But it's a pretty passive, I don't know. I wouldn't say a passive welcome because he does throw a big party, but it's like whoever's here can come in, but he's not seeking anyone out. This
father is not about searching anyone out. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Whether it's the son who has wandered off with his inheritance or the son who's out in the field, the father just deals with what's in front of him. I think that's right.
So then what do you make of the father's response to his older son?
I read the father as genuinely wanting at this moment his family to be reunited, which is up to the older son at this point. He can either come in or not come in. But I also read the father as a little tone deaf about what's happening here. Like, I want you to come in, but the point of this party is not that we're all back together. The point of this party is your dead brother is alive again. So it seems a little ambivalent to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, presumably in the framing of this parable, the Pharisees are supposed to see themselves in this older brother. Is that the connection that you make?
I think that is probably right, yeah.
And so if that is the connection that you make, what's the point? Like, what are the Pharisees supposed to think? Do you know?
Okay, so if I try to read it in that lens, again, it comes out reading pretty good for the Pharisees in my mind. Like, a little better than I might have expected.
Yeah.
But this idea that, like, you are on a path. Your path is good. Like, you are working away day by day, doing what has to be done. Like, it's all good. And you are not harmed. Contrary to what you might think, you are not harmed by welcoming these other folks in.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I love that. And this is often read as being very harsh against the Pharisees who are so legalistic that they can't, put up with somebody else. But I think you're right that the message here is you're invited into the party. I want you there. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine. There's no real critique of them here. The only reason that they wouldn't be in the party is because they chose to let their jealousy keep them out of the party. And then this story ends with this kind of open question, like, is he going to come in or is he not? And so then if you read it that way, I think that's right. There's an invitation to the Pharisees here to say, come on into the party. The only cost of admission is you've got to recognize that we need to celebrate these ones that we thought were not going to come to the party, and here they are too. Now, if you read the Pharisees as deciding not to come in, then it's negative, like, well, they're too full of themselves not to come in. But the story doesn't actually finish and tell us what the older brother does.
Well, this text has given us a lot.
It has.
A lot of different things we could pull from. What is a message that you might pull out for folks today?
I've really been struck by the reading that Amy Jo Levine offers of the point of this parable being about the man, the woman, the father, the shepherd, the woman, the father, and what do they notice and not notice? And, that idea that, there's the man with the 100 and he sees one is missing and he goes and gets it. That the 100 is so important to him, he goes and gets it. The woman has 10, she sees that there's 9 and one's missing, so she goes and gets it. The father has 2, and he first loses the one, and then it turns out he's also lost the other one. And, what that has spoken to me is this question of who is missing from my community that I don't notice. Am I the shepherd who notices when 1 out of 100 goes missing? Or am I the father at the end who doesn't even notice when 1 out of the 2 goes missing? And how can I pay more attention? How can I be more like that diligent woman or that eagle-eyed shepherd, and really diligently keep people to me? This reminds me of something that happened in my Mercy Church community a while back, which was, Mercy Church, I don't talk about as much as I used to because we haven't been meeting during the pandemic. But Mercy Church is mostly people who are homeless. And so people who come into Mercy Church are often people who are in crisis. And so a lot of attention goes to people who are having a crisis. But there are also people who come to Mercy Church who are, middle class. They come because they want to be part of the community. They don't require a lot of attention. They offer a lot to the community. And we had one woman who was coming to Mercy Church for a long time. She was middle class and she quit coming. And about 6 weeks later, she came back and I said, I am so glad to see you. And she said, really? I'm surprised to hear you say that. I didn't think you cared that I was here. And I thought, oh my God, like I'm the father in the prodigal son parable who paid all my attention to the one who wandered away and came back. And I forgot to pay attention to the one who was like holding down the fort. And I lost her and I didn't realize that I had lost her. And so that has really stuck with me as, like paying attention to all parts of our community and not just the ones who are missing because they're, living some kind of lost life, but the ones who are missing because they require so little attention that you forget to pay attention to them, and learning to care about the togetherness of the whole instead of always being focused on the lostness of the one. That's where this parable strikes me.
I love that. And I love especially that when you started talking about Mercy Church, that's not where I thought you were going to go. And I think that really weaves in a really beautiful way, like the story of your ministry in the world and the last part of this parable with the older brother and who is the lost son. And I love that. So that's a lot to think about.
Where do you go when you think about this parable today? Or these parables, I guess?
I started off in a similar direction. Although, I feel like I need to name here that like I'm not talking about sinners and repenting and all of that. So I would just like to put those categories aside. And just sort of talk about what it means to build a community that is for everyone and not just for the people for whom it is somewhat easy to be there. And a little bit like pulling on the same strands that you pulled on, but then sort of landing somewhere different, to think about how many of our communities are built because the system works for the majority. And at least the distress I have encountered sometimes in community life when there's a suggestion that we should alter that to make it fit better for one person, because it's an inconvenience to other folks. Like say, I feel like I should speak in some kind of specifics here. Well, let's talk about ability and disability. Does it make sense to invest a certain amount of money that the congregation has to be able to provide a way for this one person, is just one person, as opposed to the whole, giant congregation, to be able to truly access the same kind of spiritual experience and community life as everyone else? And it can feel, I think, from what I have heard in community life, it can feel to others that like, well, but what would best serve me in this moment is investing that money in a different way. I mean, it's hard. And I think these parables acknowledge that it's hard to be one of the 99 sometimes, that you have to say like, this is about equity instead of equality. This is about getting everyone to a same state of welcome and inclusion as opposed to everyone gets $5 or whatever it is. Yeah, that is where my head is going. It is to inclusion in our community. And as you said, who is not here and who was never here, because this was never a place that truly invited them to have a real, genuine, fun, spiritual experience.
I really love that. And this idea of fully welcoming everyone into the community. It matters that we're all here together. It matters that there's the 100 and the 10 and the 2. That seems crucially important. And that what we were saying earlier was, in this situation, you might be part of the 99, but you could imagine another situation in which you're the one. You're the one who gets lost. You're the one who doesn't fit in. You're the one for whom the community is not working. And if you've established that the community finds ways to pull the one back in, you don't have to worry about getting lost. When it's your turn to be the one, you can trust that the community is going to bring you back.
That's right.
Because you were part of the community that brought someone else back.
That's right.
That seems really urgently important.
That's
and
right.
when you theologize these parables, as Luke wants us to do, to think about God and sin and forgiveness, like that's the image here, is that at the end of the day, this is a God who wants to bring everyone in, and letting the attention go to the one to be brought back to the fold means that if you're the one who goes missing, like God's going to come back and bring you back too.
Well, Bobby, we have read a lot of text today.
We have.
Next time we are in the next chapter, Luke chapter 16.
Luke 16, 19 to 31. Yeah, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus.
I look forward to it.
Me too. All right, I'll see you then.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this special extended episode of BibleWorm. If you'd like to get access to extended episodes every week, just join our Patreon at the Extended Worm level or higher. You'll also find other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more, starting at just $4 per month. Visit patreon.com/BibleWorm podcast for details.
BibleWorm is produced by Bobby Williamson and edited by Joel and Laura Becker. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby. We are grateful to all our supporters for helping us keep the podcast going. A special thank you to our executive producer, Fox Valley Presbyterian Church in Geneva, Illinois.
Join us again next week when we'll be discussing Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31. Until then, keep on digging.